guys, my name is Angie, and I'm going to be talking about kids and sugar. My main claim is that high amount of sugar consumed by children is going to be harmful to their life and their health. My two supporting claims are that, number one, it's going to be, children would rather sit around, which decreases their exercise, and the increase of sugar. That's my number one. My number two is when children consume too much sugar, it can alter the balance between the good and bad bacteria in their body, and it also weakens their immune system. Going back to my first supporting claim, which is children would rather sit around, decreasing their exercise while the increase of sugar increases. That's mainly because of their daily exercise. They take in too much food and they don't access out the calories. A lot of the reason is because of technology these days. According to the American Psychological Association, approximately 20% of our youth under preschool is already 20% obese. Another rate from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, they state that ages from 2 to 5 already doubled in their rating, in their percentage of obesity, which is it went from 5 to 12.4%. And then from ages 6 to 11, it went from 6.5 to 17%. And then from ages 12 to 19, it went from 5% to 17.6. So it's increasing as the years go on, and it's not just increasing by little, but it's doubling every year. Children need to learn to move their body more rather than sit around at home on these electronic devices, because nearly each child spends about 45 hours a week on computer, TV, or cell phone, or iPad, or whatever. Especially with the TVs, because there's so much commercial and advertisement. Nearly every year there's about 10,000 advertisements just related to food and candy and fast food, and because they use so much color and so much graphics, children tend to lean towards wanting it more, which increases their rate of wanting to eat, increases their rate of obesity. My second claim is when they consume too much sugar, it can alter their balance between the good and bad bacteria, and it weakens our immune system. So basically the sugar in the blood cannot tell, or it clogs the blood system, so it cannot figure out if what they're consuming is beneficial to their body or if it's harming their body. So it just basically does nothing, and their immune system just fails to the point where they get a lot of sickness. The most common one is a cold like flu. They're constantly coughing, or they have a headache, or they just don't feel like doing anything, and that's because the stuff that they're eating brings no nutrition to their body. Our body is made up of trillions of good and bad bacteria, but because these food that they're consuming has no vitamins, it cannot tell if it's harmful to them or not. Lastly, when we drink too much sugar, it reduces our body's ability to kill, or it reduces the ability for the white cells to kill the bad germs to nearly 40%, which is nearly half of the life that it needs to, which is close to half. It cannot tell, so it's constantly hurting, and if it starts at a young age, it goes up to until they're older, or eventually it'll lead to death. But once they get older, it's really hard to change that lifestyle. So it leads on to their next generation, where their kids will be obese, and then they'll just keep commonly going down the line.
All right, Angie, you identify the proposition. It's, I think, a little complicated, and it sounds almost informative in nature. My impression at the very beginning is that this is not an argument. It sounds mostly like a description of what effect sugar is going to have on the body. The one place where there might have been some controversy is whether or not the issue of obesity is primarily a result of inactivity or primarily a result of food consumption. And you basically eliminate whether or not there would be any argument by saying that kids do both of those things and both of them contribute to this particular problem. So what's in dispute? Does anybody say inactivity doesn't have an impact on obesity, or that sugar consumption is healthy for kids? I don't know that there's any controversy on those particular subjects. So where is the argument here? It sounds to me like it's an informative presentation that attempts to explain why consumption of sugar is problematic and how these things affect the body in a variety of ways. And I don't know that there's any dispute on those points. However, there might be dispute because most of your information is asserted. You make this reference to the number, the bacteria in the body and the way they work in relationship to vitamins, and that the sugar affects that. And I'm going, where does that information come from? The statistical information you had early on was about the obesity rates of kids under 5 or between 2 and 5, or the rate at which it's increasing. So you've got some good statistical information there that demonstrates that obesity is increasing. But like I said, I don't know that that's a controversy. Nobody's denying that that is true. There might be some argument about how dangerous that is or what the causes are. But you basically have covered the major causes, and I don't think anybody denies that those are the causes. Maybe there's a choice between those two. You assert that TV has an influence on the rate at which people consume the certain foods. So, they've got these interesting things that they see in advertising, and that makes them want the stuff that makes them fat more. That might be true, but I didn't hear any proof of that. That's just your explanation. There's a potential argument there, but it's missing the proof on that. So I see some issues here that have to do with kind of figuring out where the argument is on this subject, and then a lot of assertions. There's just a lot of stuff. I didn't hear source cites for anything except those statistics that we mentioned earlier. Everything else is largely asserted in the presentation. I think that's a little bit problematic. Later on, for instance, you mentioned drinking sugar decreases the white cells by 40%. Well, who drinks sugar? What are you talking about here? I assume you're talking about soda. This is not a direct quote. And the 40% figure, I don't know where you got that information and how important is that decrease. I don't get any follow-up on that. So I'm getting bits and pieces of ideas here that, there may be an argument somewhere here, but I can't quite tell what it is. And it just doesn't feel like it's fully formed. So it's going to be a little problematic in responding to this. You've got to think about the refutation speaker. They're going to be going, well, I'm not sure what it is I'm going to be arguing about, except that there'll be a lot of criticism about maybe a shortage of evidence here and there. All right, thank you.